Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series, and you're about to hear one of my Genius Network interviews, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you find it very useful. If you want to find out more information about some of the interviews and resources that can help you in your business, you can go to www.joepolish.com. And we have a Joe Polish Recommends section with all kinds of resources and vendors and services and products that we recommend that can help you in your business. And also for more useful interviews and a whole list of other people that I've interviewed, you can go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks and enjoy the interview.
Hello, this is Joe Polish, founder of Genius Network Interview Series, and I've got a very good friend of mine on the line, Mr. Dean Jackson. You're in California, I think, right now, right, Dean?
Palm Springs right now, that's right.
I've interviewed you before for my Genius Network interview series, and this is going to be a different sort of interview. And this interview is actually going to be recorded predominantly for my coaching club members, my Platinum Plus members, and people that are part of my high-end exclusive brainstorm groups. And so the people that are going to be listening to this interview are in one of my coaching groups, ranging on the low end $5,000 a year to on the high end $25,000 a year, which is what I charge for these groups at the time of the recording of this interview. And if this interview happens to land its way into the hands of anyone else, then I'm sure you're still going to find it enormously valuable. Well, first off, thank you for taking the time on short notice to do this interview with me. I know I called you up just yesterday and said, Dean, I'd like to really talk to you about a couple of areas of business that I think you just have such an enormous insight for. And in your world, I'm just going to give the listeners a little bit of background on my relationship with you and how I got to meet you and known you over all these years. It's been probably going on about a decade that I've known you, and I met you through by referral only. You've worked with Joe Stump and Terry Hunnefeld for many years, and our good friend Evan Pagan and Richard Miller, and it's kind of a motley crew of individuals that we all know.
That's right.
And so I met you in the direct response marketing world, and you are absolutely an expert at writing copy, at direct response, teaching realtors. You've taught thousands of different people. But I know predominantly your niche has been real estate agents for many years. Your website is, one of your websites is www.stopyourdivorce.com.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have helped tens of thousands of people, men and women, that were in the stages of divorce, actually reverse that if they really want to and what needs to be done with that. So if anyone ever wants to look at that subject matter, stopyourdivorce.com has been completely put together by Dean. Very smart model that you've done, and I know you've helped a lot of people with that. And your background is really marketing, and you invented the concept that I refer to all the time as before, during, and after, which is all the different stages of a business relationship with a client, with a prospect, what to do before the sale, what to do during the sale, what to do after the sale. Right. And so your background is very heavy in direct response marketing, and you really are one of the top direct marketers in the country. Now, that's not why I wanted to interview you today, though. What I really wanted to interview you on was the subject of focus and goals and success. And so before I get into those sort of questions, could you maybe give a thumbnail sketch of anything that you'd like the listeners to know about you that would help them have a better understanding of who you are that I did not mention, of course?
Sure. My background's in marketing, but I started out as a real estate agent, and that's where I got to apply all of my marketing knowledge. I started out, like most people who get into direct marketing, in some kind of a sales business. So I've had experiences ranging from making 100 cold calls a day when I was starting out in my real estate career, and then discovering the ultimate leverage of using direct response, where as soon as I discovered that, and I was able to figure out that I could put words on paper that would get people to call me instead of me calling out to them, it was just life-changing. So that's really been what I've gone very deep in on all my study of my life here and applying that to make my life better.
Yeah, and you're really, really good at it. And you've spoken a couple of times at my events when I've asked you to. You've begrudgingly agreed to do it, probably more so out of friendship than anything else, because you're definitely not someone that has ever struck me as like really even caring about being famous or any of that stuff. And you make a lot of money, and you make a lot of money in, I would say, very easy ways. Probably not easy in what it required for you to learn all of these robotic processes and just developing the business that you have today. It's become easier for you now, and I say this because I've hung out with you enough. I've known you over all these years, and recently you spent half the year in Winter Haven, Florida. That's where your house in Florida is, right? Winter Haven.
Yeah.
And then half the year in Toronto, and with your wife, Sony, who is I guess her nickname would be Sony. That's what we all call her. But Sonia, is that her official name?
That's right. Yeah.
That's her birth name. But you know, her official name. But nonetheless, last time I was up in Toronto, we're driving around in your nice little Mercedes convertible that one of our business associate friends of ours gave you as a gift because you taught him so much about marketing that he's made literally millions of dollars based on an idea that you gave him several years ago. And while we were driving around, I was like, Dean, show me what you do. How do you do all this stuff? Because what I want the listeners to know is that you are a guy from, I can just tell you, I know this from knowing you and from experience and hanging out with you. You're really pretty much kind of lazy now, and you like playing golf.
Yeah.
You really enjoy playing golf. You play golf, I guess, on a good week, four days a week or so?
Yeah, probably at least 3 or 4 times a week I like to play.
Yeah. And you go where you want to go, when you want to go. You work when you want to work. You make very large sums of money for very little amounts of work. And so you've built a business that Michael Gerber writes about in the E-Myth. It has systems, and you're just a very leveraged guy. And so the reason I wanted to do the interview is to kind of convey to all my listeners and my coaching members especially, how do you do what it is you do, and share some of the processes so that the listeners can do it also. And a couple of things I want to focus on is goal setting, and you have this analogy called golf that I'd like to have you talk to that subject first, and then I want to ask you about this amazing process called I Know I'm Being Successful When. And this is a list of characteristics that you developed of you're being successful when you follow these. And you took me through this process last time I was in Toronto. And I want on this audio recording to take all of my coaching club members through this particular list so that they can learn how to develop this for themselves, because you are an individual, and I know literally hundreds of highly successful entrepreneurs, many of them, including myself, and I'll be very transparent on this interview. I'll actually talk about dysfunctional sides of my behavior and how I get seduced by opportunities and all of that stuff, more so because it's funny, and secondly, I want it to be instructional for our listeners, because you are a guy that, just like me, has a deal after deal, opportunity after opportunity proposed to you on a weekly and probably even daily basis. Someone's saying, hey, look at this. Here's a great way to make money. This is really cool. Let's get involved in this. And you are probably out of 5 people that I know in the world, you are on the top 5 list of people I know that just flat out do not get seduced by opportunities. You're very methodical about how you want your life to be, what you want to spend your time on, and I think you have a great ability of teaching this to other people, and so that's what I wanted to talk about. First off, why do you not get seduced by opportunities? Is this brain chemistry, or is this something you have taught yourself over the years? Because I'm like a kid in a candy store when it comes to how many books can I read, seminars to attend, different projects to get involved in. You know the drill inside out. Talk about that.
If we're going to talk about that first, then we'll change up the order and we'll talk about I Know I'm Being Successful first, because that will really be helpful once we talk about golf to have an understanding of how that applies. Part of it is really knowing what you want, being crystal clear on what it is that your life is going to be about. Like, there's no end to the seduction of constantly doing more and more and more, and acquisition, and doing all these things. There's as entrepreneurs, we're all quick starts. We all love new ideas. We all love to get involved in things, and we all think that we're Superman and that we can implement as fast as we can think. It's easy to think up ideas. It's easy to know what to do, but once you start actually applying it, you realize how much time it takes and how much complexity it creates in your life. So one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur is there's no end. There's no limit. Nobody's telling you, well, this is how many hours you can work, or this is how much money you can make, or this is how many opportunities you can get involved in. You literally have, an unlimited opportunity to do anything you want, make as much money as you want, and get involved in as many projects as you want. But what ultimately that, in my observation, leads to is this never-ending cycle of constantly doing more and more and more without really looking at where is the finish line, or is there a finish line,
Right.
And so when I look at it, what really is most important to me is my life, is having a great life. And I always like to talk about it in terms of having a perfect life. If you're going to aspire, you might as well aspire to perfection. So I really spend a lot of time, and I've spent a lot of time in the past, idealizing what is it exactly that I want. So if I'm, we chase success and we keep running after it, and like Dan Sullivan, our friend, talks about, is it's constantly a moving horizon. You keep moving towards it, but you never reach it. There's always something more to aspire to, because as you get closer, the vista changes. So only in looking back are you able to see the progress that you've made. But at some point, is there an opportunity for you to say, I've made it, I'm successful? Does success have to be constantly out in front of you? And so when I started looking at it, I started thinking about, well, what would successful mean to me? And at the time when I wrote these, some of these were aspirational, where I didn't have these in my life, but they're all written in a way that I will know that I've got it. That's why the phrase that I start out with is, I know I'm being successful when. And it's all written in the present tense. I know now that I'm being successful when. It's not, I will be successful later on, or this is my aspiration. It's in the present tense. If I look at these things, and I've got 10 of them, I've got a top 10 list of ways that I know I'm being successful. You want me to share some of those with you?
Yeah, actually I would. And what I'll do also, just for entertainment purposes for our listeners, I'll share some of mine that I have. That you actually took me through this whole process.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent several hours on this. Yeah. And what I want the listeners to really think about when you say these is, this is what works for you. This is not, Dean has never been, a person that I've ever seen tell anyone how to live their life. It's like, this is his life. This is how because see, the whole subject, Dean, of success, before you get into the list, the whole subject of success, I think, is very confusing to people, especially when they try to adopt other people's value systems. There's so many self-help books and so many quote-unquote gurus and directions and ways that, people call success, and there's so many books with the term success in the title. Mm-hmm. And, I think the only real measurement of true success is how you define it. I mean, who am I to tell someone what is successful? It may be successful for me, but it may not be successful for someone else. And in this society, so much of success is based on, just financial success. I mean, well, yeah, you can have millions of dollars, but every other area of your life is a complete train wreck. Your health is shot. You have no friends. I mean, is that person really, really successful? So as everyone listens to your list, I want them to, see it as an example, but also realize that when you create your own list, which I'd like, we're going to take you through, I'd like you to think about, what does success to you mean? And that's what is so critical about what you said. I know I'm being successful when. Mm-hmm. And what I like in that title is the term being successful, not I know I'm successful when. I know I'm being successful, because there are times where when I go through and do the things that cause me to be successful based on my terms, I'm being successful, and then when I'm not doing these things, I'm not being successful. So it's not like I'm always successful or not successful. There are times when I'm on track that my life just works at an optimal level. So let's hear your list.
Okay. Number one on my list is that I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? That's number one for me. So I know I'm being successful when I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? Because that's ultimately, part of the reason that most people are attracted to being entrepreneurs is having time freedom. That's the big goal that we're all striving for when we want to work for ourselves as opposed to work for somebody else. So knowing that if I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today, that's going to be the start of a good day,
Right.
And so I really look at the opportunities that I'm faced with, and you asked, how do I avoid being seduced into opportunities? I put them through this whole filter here, Is taking advantage of this opportunity, is it going to move me closer to my definition of success, or is it moving me further away? Is it going to compromise my definition of success?
Well, do you ever pull like all-nighters and wake up at night and say, what would I like to do tonight?
You just blew my mind.
Yeah, there you go. Something to think about. Okay.
So my next one is my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. So I know I'm being successful when my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. One of the first aspirations that I had, because when I first started writing this, that wasn't true. But if I got to a point where I have enough revenue coming in passively that I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? When you get to that stage, then it's a freedom experience, where you really can now design every day to be exactly like you would like. And
right.
So, and there's a difference between the freedom of knowing that my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs rather than knowing that my lifestyle requires me to continue to work so that I can pay for my lifestyle. Yeah, a lot of times what we do in aspiring to success is look at it as an external thing and, accumulating the trappings of success. That I know I'll be successful when I drive a Mercedes and have 2 houses and split my time and, all these things that could be aspirational things that you might do first, but then get trapped into, now I've got to continually work even harder to pay for all of these things. So when I was looking at this, I made a decision to live below my means and lead with revenue rather than lead with lifestyle and then hope to make revenue to pay for it.
And now you're in a situation where you basically, have what it is you want, and it just works for you. I mean,
right.
that's the key. I guess the real way to gauge it is my life working or is it not working? And,
right, exactly.
And not that it works all the time, and not that it doesn't not work all the time. It's just having a heck of a lot more moments of working than not working, and not literally building a prison with golden bars around you because you're just enslaved by, when we know a lot of people in that situation, as their income increases, their debt increases to, keep up with their, increase in revenue, and they never really, get out of it.
And the demands on their time increase, too, to keep up with that revenue.
Yeah, and that's a very stressful place to be in. And so you said something real key, too, is that when I first wrote this, that wasn't the situation I was in. And I realize that there's going to be a lot of people listening to this, that you are going to create things that allow you to be a filter for you're being successful when that you may not currently have in your life. However, it's certainly something to aspire and develop, and the more you get clear on it, which is the key thing that, in spite of all my babbling at the beginning of this interview and people going, well, when are you going to land the plane, Joe? The reason I talk about this is I just want to reiterate, even if it sounds redundant, just some of your points. Clarity is what you're all about. You are a very clear guy because you've spent a lot of time thinking about your life and how you want it to look.
Yeah, well, I created this list nearly 10 years ago, and, it was out of that thinking about what would my ideal lifestyle look like, what is my life going to be about, and how will I know when I get there? That's right. The kind of thing, because if you don't set the finish line or set the goal of where you're headed, then you're always going to be chasing it further and further out.
Yeah, and that is how I believe most entrepreneurs that I encounter, I don't know about you, most entrepreneurs that I encounter, that's exactly how they live their life. Mm-hmm. And I have really worked hard in my own life to develop that sort of structure, and that's why I'm interviewing you, because people like you are good models for me, because I am a very kind of all over the place, distractible, high, entrepreneurial ADD sort of individual, and I really need that sort of structure to bring me back. And you mentioned Dan Sullivan, and I'll mention him too, because it seems I always mention Dan when I'm talking about subjects like this. He's one of the other individuals that's on my list that lives this way. And we, even when I was up in Toronto, we went and had dinner with Dan and Babs, his wife, and Richard Rossi, who's also a very good friend of mine and a very good friend of yours. He's another one of the individuals. Those, you, Richard, and Dan, all of who I've interviewed before, are great models of this sort of structure. Be very clear, not being seduced by opportunities, and having what is a myth to most people, which is a balanced life.
Yeah.
So, what's your third one?
I can live anywhere in the world I choose. For me, that meant I didn't want to get tied down to a locally oriented business. So, because my lifestyle is, again, splitting our time between Florida and Toronto. That precludes me from getting involved in starting a local business that requires me to be in one place at any time. So, looking at that, I can live anywhere in the world I choose. Again, when you look at all these, it's set up as a filter for me to run opportunities through. If I get involved in this opportunity, is this a local thing? Is this something that's going to require me to be anywhere specific?
Yeah, no, that's great. That is great. And you do. You pretty much live where you want most of the time.
That's it. And then my fourth one is that I'm working on projects that excite me and allow me to do my very best work. My unique ability work, if you want to put it like that. That it's not about not working. It's about having the freedom to choose what it is that I work on, things that I'm excited about, things that if I want to chase whims or focus all my attention on one thing, that I'm working on projects that excite me and that I'm only working in my unique ability. It's never feels like work, the things that I'm doing.
Okay, keep on going.
And my fifth one is I can disappear for several weeks with no effect on my income. That I could disappear for several months with no effect on my income. That that freedom that, again, it's not a time-related thing where you're not trading time for money, that you're creating results, and the results are going to continue to work even if you're not,
Well, you disappear literally on a weekly basis in terms of comparative.
Exactly.
No, I mean comparative to the typical workforce out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you on average, what would you say is the amount of time you work per week?
Well,
I mean, really work.
Yeah, that'd be hard to say. I mean, probably maybe if I could get 10 focused hours a week on something, that'd be a pretty good week.
That's like a heavy workload for you.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, this sounds completely crazy for most people, and again, you'll just the more someone knows me that's listening to this, the better. I mean, I can assure you that most people that are out there preaching like all these wonderful lifestyles of a business owner and make millions of dollars and work part time, and most of that is a complete and utter joke. When people actually propose it, you are one of the few people that literally, I mean, you even have clients of yours that you've taught things that they've taken your concepts and just decided to put in, much more hours than you do that have built, multi-million dollar businesses.
Right, exactly.
It's just for you. This is just not what you, it doesn't float your boat, and you're very happy doing what you do, and you really don't work a lot. And I would have to say it just irritates the heck out of me too. Nonetheless, 'cause I work more than you do. I'm putting in more than 10 hours a week. But the point is, a lot of this is by design and by choice. And that is the key, though, is that it is by choice. You're not.
But isn't one of yours you're working on? Isn't when we were doing yours together? One of yours was I'm working on projects that excite me and allow me to do my best work, wasn't it?
Exactly, yes, it was.
Yeah.
And also another one that because I said as I was going through it with you, I was like, my passive income exceeds lifestyle needs. I mean, that works for me, and that was one of mine also. So yeah, there's definitely things that just resonate and work identically for me as they would for you, and then I have different ones, of course, which I'll share.
Yeah.
But, being able to disappear, like our friend Richard Rossi, I mean, at the time that I'm doing this recording, he is on a 1-year vacation with his family.
Yeah.
And he checks in to the United States 10 days every quarter. And, so he actually will spend 40 days in a 365-day period actually coming back to the United States and just checking in, making sure the house is in order, making sure that his $75 million a year company with 200 employees is, working. But it really does. I mean, his company continues to work and grow. He's not even there. And, he's part of my $25,000 a year coaching group, and he will be listening to this interview. And, the point is that is something that it took him 20 years to develop his business to the level where it's at right now. But the point is, it never would have gotten there had he not been thinking about this and developing his skill set all throughout his years as an entrepreneur. And that's really the goal and objective that I want for people listening here, is that when you're done here, I don't want anyone to say, well, God, my life isn't like that at all. The point is, Dean has worked really, really hard for what he has. He got there, though, because he constantly thought about what is important to him and got clear and built a lifestyle and a business that works. And every single person has that same opportunity available to them if they're willing to follow a lead. So, okay, what's the next one?
Number 6 for me is that there are no whiny people in my life. And, and there's the thing is that a lot of times if you're going to do or get involved in projects that involve other people, it's, sometimes it can be a hassle. And there's whiny people. I don't have time for that. I don't want anything to do with that. That's one of my things, is there are no whiny people in my life. I just don't have time for it.
Yeah, and whiny people are annoying. And
that's exactly it.
Dan Sullivan refers to, battery drainers versus battery chargers.
Yeah.
And, Brian Standage, my CEO, he says, some people are a drain, some others are a fountain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, there's all kinds of ways to look at, to describe them, but, one of the best ways to improve your life is to eliminate all the toxic and negative people out of it, and then all of a sudden it just frees you up in so many ways.
Right.
Okay, number 7.
Okay, number 7 for me is that I wear my watch for curiosity only. That, and that, you say these things like, I know I'm being successful and I wear my watch for curiosity only. Just to know that the essence of that, what's really behind that, is that I don't want to get into something where I've just got constant time obligations and things where I've got to be rushing around to get to, appointments, or trying to really make sure my day really works, that if one thing goes off track, I've got to, be constantly aware of the clock. That's not what I want for my life. I don't do my best work like that, So the best thing for me is when I'm at my very best, and I know I'm successful when I'm wearing my watch for curiosity only. And you probably know that yourself. And if you're working on a project, or if you're getting something done, it's just so much better for you if you can be working and get in flow with something, and not be constantly looking, I got to rush off and get going.
Right. Well, I mean, you really take this to the upbeat level, though, because I stayed at your house for 2 nights when I was, I think it might have been longer, while I was in Toronto, and I asked you, in the guest bedroom, I said, Dean, do you have an alarm clock? And you're like, I don't. I'm like, and I'm like, and I'm thinking you got to be kidding. And I'm like, you don't have an alarm clock in your house. I'm like, well, how do you and your wife get up? What about when you have an appointment? You're like, we just wake up. And I was like, I'm like, please, you got to have an alarm clock. Even though you got clocks. But there's you have no clocks in your house that have an alarm device attached to them. And I'm like going, this is the most freaking hysterical thing that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's, really true. You wake up whenever the heck you want, and, you only wear your watch for curiosity only. I mean, it's, when I first heard your list, I'm thinking this is this was several years ago when I first saw your list. I thought, man, I can't imagine living like this. And after these years, many of these things that I've wanted have actually become a reality, and the other ones are becoming more of that every day, and it's solely because of the focus on them, which is what we're doing in the purpose of this interview. So,
exactly.
All right, number 8.
Number 8 is that I have no time obligations or deadlines. You might look at that and say, well, you come out and you speak at these main events, and that's a time obligation, and that's true. So I have a time obligation for 3 days a month. Now, aside from that, if I'm not out speaking at a main event here, I really don't have any other time obligations or deadlines of when something has to be done.
Okay, so let me just give some context in case someone doesn't know what a main event is.
Oh,
so
right,
you've been doing this for many years, and you come out for 3 days a month for just by referral only. You work with them as a consultant, and you help them design their whole program. They're a multi-million-dollar coaching and training organization for the real estate industry. And you only speak, a couple hours during these 3 days or whatever?
Right.
Or what
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I probably do 5 hours over the 3 days. I speak a little bit each day.
Okay, good. And so you do that once a month, and you've been doing that for God knows how long.
Yeah, 10 years or more.
And that's probably the only thing that you've really got in your life that requires you to have to be anywhere.
That's exactly right, yeah.
which I think is, of course, funny. But, okay, so...
But again, you know what? And I justify that with saying that I'm working on projects that excite me and allow me to do my best work. It's enjoyable. Yeah. I like it, and I get to add on to some of these trips. Like here, I'm coming from Palm Springs. We're going to go out, and I'll be seeing you this weekend in San Diego. So
yeah,
it's kind of nice. It adds some variety, get to travel a little bit. We go to great places. I like the people that I see out here, and I like to teach, be a part of society for a little bit for 3 days.
Yeah, actually, I wish really, you are truly just such a bright guy, and so yeah, any time that you can share what it is you do with the world, all the better. So, now let me ask you something about I have no time obligations or deadlines in the context for someone listening, because there's a lot of people whose businesses, including many of my coaching members, that have service businesses that have appointments day in, day out, and one of the things is getting trapped in, well, I've got to do everything myself, and I don't have employees and people that are running my company and that I can delegate this stuff to, so, there's no way that I can even ever possibly imagine living without, time obligations or deadlines. And for me, if I don't put deadlines on myself for certain projects that are important to me, I just simply won't get them done. And so the deadline has been one of the most valuable inventions on the planet for me. Mm-hmm. So I want to have you talk to, in the right context, how does one use time and how does one use deadlines?
No, absolutely. I'll give you a couple of examples because, and again, this is my list, right? When you say no time obligations or no deadlines, that, for me, that's what works. I have a friend who is a mortgage broker who's very successful, that all he does is these appointments. He figured out that in his business, the most valuable thing that he can do is do the initial consultation, the initial interview with a new client where he sits down with them for 45 minutes and lays out what the plan will be. Then the everything before that and after that is handled by team members. So for him, his ideal scenario is knowing that on certain hours, between maybe on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays, he's got certain appointment hours, and he knows that that's when he works and that everything is going on behind the scenes to fill those slots that he has available with appointments.
Right.
And that might work for a carpet cleaner, that if a carpet cleaner loves to do the actual part of the carpet cleaning, it might be that they set everything up so that they are completely focused on that their schedule is full, that they wake up with their daily itinerary and they don't have to worry about that every appointment slot they have is full. That could work for a dentist or a doctor. See, I wouldn't make a very good doctor or dentist because I know that to be successful in those things, you've got to have appointment times. You've got to have times in the office, and that doesn't fit for me. So I look at that, again, as a filter. Is something that is presented to me as an opportunity going to require that I have time commitments that go with it?
Right. Well, in including my top copywriter that I have here that works with me at Piranha, if one of his things is writing for a minimum of an hour a day. I mean, it's just part of his life, and that's what makes his life and his income and everything work, is that he writes for at least a minimum of 1 hour per day.
Right.
And so, it could be, there's all kinds of ways to spin it. But I just wanted to talk to that because I want all the listeners to really understand this, that for one, this is your list, and secondly, it's how you take this and in what context you take it. Because you're not saying time or time obligations or deadlines are bad. It's just how you utilize those and how they fit into what you want your life to look like.
Right.
Okay, number 9, Dean.
Number 9 for me is that I wear whatever I want all the time. And what that speaks to for me is just, again, the freedom that I'm not in a situation where I'm trying to impress somebody or influence somebody that I have to, or somebody else is, dictating what I wear kind of thing. I wear whatever I want all the time. That, for me, is just another part of that freedom,
Yep, and I can tell by the way you dress that you really do wear whatever you want all the time. And I really wish you would improve the attire a little bit. I'm kidding, of course.
I know.
All right, so what's number 10?
And then number 10 is that I can quit any project at any time. That no matter what, it doesn't matter. I'm never working on something where I really need. I don't like it, but I have to keep doing it. I avoid anything like that. Where you get to where you're only working on the things that you really want to work on. If anything becomes stressful or not fun or not, exciting for me or something that I want to be and continue to be involved in, I know that I can quit any project at any time.
Yeah, and that's it's a great filter. And this list is a great filter. Yeah, the last one, I can quit any project at any time, reminds me of Dan Sullivan's analogy of, I'd like to have a listener just write this down because I think it's kind of a neat way to just frame in your mind what you just said. Dan Sullivan has this where you put an M as in mess equals sign O as an obligation minus C, which is commitment. Mess equals an obligation minus a commitment. And he talks about when you have a mess in your life, it's because you have an obligation, but you're not committed to it.
Right.
And so, it's kind of like if your marriage is a mess, you may have an obligation to the children or to whatever, but you don't have a commitment there, so you either need to improve the commitment or somehow, increase the obligation. And part of it is with clients. I mean, the way that first made sense to me is, I have messes when I find myself doing business-related things and I'm not happy with the compensation that I'm receiving, and that sometimes can simply be done by increasing the price. People constantly give me a hard time for my consulting fees when they contact me for consulting, and I'm $20,000 a day, and people are like, well, you can get other people for $3,000 a day or
Perfect.
Whatever.
Perfect. Yeah.
And
Here's
I'm just,
5 people you can get for more.
yeah. My whole thing is, well, that's great. And for me, I'm not willing to do consulting. I don't like doing consulting enough to where I'll do it for less than $20,000 a day. Am I good at it? Yeah, I think I'm pretty darn good at it.
Yeah.
And everyone that I consult with, tends to make lots of money, far more than what they ever pay me. But the point is, it's a large sum of money, and it's a large obligation to me, though. So that, I had a mess when I was half that. And so I actually doubled my consulting fees, literally just overnight. I went from $10,000 a day to $20,000 a day because I wanted to eliminate half the consultations that I was doing every year and still make the same amount of money. And say for that sum of money, I'd be willing to do it, but I even have more of a filter. I only want to do it on projects that I would only want to do consulting on if I was genuinely interested in it. Because even if someone's paying me, if I have to spend an entire day helping somebody strategize over a marketing promotion or campaign or company that really holds no interest to me, I'm not doing them any justice because I'm not putting my all into it, and it's basically it's a waste of my time, even though I'm getting paid for it. So part of it is I only want to do things that just enhance me, and then it's kind of like getting paid to get educated, and to me that's the ultimate scenario. But that would be an example of, if you're not happy with what you're getting compensated and you feel that it's a mess, either get better clients or raise your prices or figure out how to structure it so it's no longer a mess, or eliminate the obligation entirely if you just cannot find a way to be committed to it. All right, now I have a whole list too, Dean, but here's kind of how I'd like to work it. Instead of me just going through what my list is, can you kind of go through how would you recommend someone sit down and develop this list for themselves, and then after you've gone through that, I'll share briefly some of my I know I'm being successful wins so people can just see examples that I've come up with.
Okay.
But I'd like you to just take our listeners through doing this for themselves. And I would say at this point, if you are driving, go through this when you're not driving so you can actually take notes or listen to this and then go back later and do it. But this could be and will be one of the most useful exercises that you've ever done in your entire life if you take it seriously and you devote the time to it. I can assure you of that. It has been very, very helpful to me. I've had countless conversations with Dean about this whole subject matter, and this is the first time. I don't know if anyone's ever interviewed you or even done anything on this list with you before. I have no idea.
No. Actually, I did an interview with Bob Scheinfeld about this.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but the part of this is that these all this list, these are representations of things that are kind of I know I'm being successful when statements that are sort of code for the things that you want more of or less of in your life. So, a great way to start this is to, have two yellow pads or two pieces of paper, and at the top have, more of this, and have all the things that you want more of, all the things you like about your life, and on the other page writing less of this, and having a list of all the things that you don't enjoy or you don't want. Those are kind of in terms of the activities, the things that you do, the way that you want to organize your time, the way that you want to spend your days, the kind of people that you want to be involved with, all those kind of things, in addition to looking at what ultimately your lifestyle is going to look like. Where do you want to live? Are you happy and content to live in one place and spend all of your time there and maybe build a local business? That's great. Is it that you want to have a lifestyle that's more portable than that? Is it something that you want to be able to literally pick up and move anywhere and not have any effect on your income? If you're building a local business, there's a lot of equity that you can build by being involved in a local community for a long period of time. But what the trade-off for that is that 20 years later, it's more difficult to pick up and move somewhere else in the country and have that same, that success and that level of lifestyle is not necessarily portable,
Right. So it makes sense to, and this could be in the beginning a constant changing list. Where I'm at right now with mine, I want to really narrow it down to 10 core ones, and right now I actually have 21 on my list, and I've read them dozens and dozens and dozens of times and tweaked them and thought about them and everything, and it's a work in progress here.
Yeah.
But the point is, I am in a much more clear state than I ever have been as a result of you using this as a filter, and I'm really big on filters. Just like we teach in marketing, sift, sort, and screen. Yeah. One of my favorite tools that I actually teach to my coaching members is the not-to-do list, because I believe the not-to-do list is far more important than the to-do list.
I agree.
So this kind of is used in conjunction with my not-to-do list for me. All right, so more of activities, people, things to be involved with, lifestyle, less of what? Frustration, less.
For me,
that could be any.
When you look at it, it's like, deadlines, don't want that. Less time commitments, less whiny people, less having to be somewhere at a particular time, less time pressure in terms of having, a really tight schedule of having just constant appointments with no discretionary time.
So how long would you recommend sitting down and kind of brainstorming this out before you start constructing the list?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an evolutionary process. I think it might take you 3 months to get your list to where you really are happy with it. It's not a kind of thing where you're just going to kind of sit down and write it out one time. It's going to be an evolving draft, and when you start reading the words, they're going to resonate with you when you've got them right. When you know that that's the feeling that you're looking for. Because ultimately, success is it's a feeling that you have, right? It's an internal thing rather than measuring success from an external frame of reference.
Yeah, you know what? That is so true that this really is it is an internal thing.
Yeah.
And so much of what we expose ourselves to in this society, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. I mean, there really is a lot of good stuff. I respect people that are seekers of progress and betterment and how to, than people that sit around and do nothing. It's just that a lot of times you can get caught up in the trap of just pursuing all of these external things, thinking that that's going to ultimately make you happy.
Yeah.
When in reality, that you can get all kinds of materialistic items. If you don't work on the inside, though, it's you're still
I think
going to
one of the most valuable things that I learned was the concept of incremental happiness. Incremental gains in happiness. That
right.
We've talked about this before. Like you find you going from driving a Porsche or driving a Mercedes to going up to a Ferrari or something is probably going to be an incremental gain in happiness, as opposed to going from not having a car to having a car is an exponential gain in happiness because it opens up a whole new world of opportunity for you,
Right.
And so you start looking at the things like what would be, what are the things that you have the opportunities for exponential gains in happiness, and if you just realize by the time, and you've gone through that, gone from driving a Mazda to driving a Lexus to driving a Porsche to driving a Mercedes, and had, going from the Lexus to the Porsche is great. It's exciting when you get that goal, because I have always wanted a Porsche. I still have it, but getting that is exciting for the first little while, and after a couple of months, it's just the car that you drive. It's not It's not as exciting long term. So I know, and you see that aspirational thing. You and I both have a lot of friends that get Ferraris and go the next level kind of thing. But you look at it and say, you know what, I like my time freedom and stuff like that more.
Exactly. Well, Eben's, I'll make sure that our friend Eben actually listens to this interview, because he has a Ferrari, and I personally think we're both much happier than he is.
I do too, yeah. I know from firsthand experience, that's right.
No, so that's very good. So, okay, so you kind of use that to brainstorm, and then anything specifically. I mean, and I don't want to overcomplicate the process. I mean, this really is part of just pulling out a piece of paper and thinking. I mean, we can't give you over an interview, what your list is. All we can do is guide you and lead a horse to water, per se. But now it's time for you to actually sit down and start developing your own list and put it in writing. I mean, this isn't something that exists in your head. I mean, it's important to put this down on paper and go ahead and do it, and then I'll go through my list here after if there's any other insights. And then I want you to talk about your golf analogy, which is fabulous. And one other thing, because there's no structured questions that I have. This was purely just a conversation I wanted to have with you and just let it flow, is I want you to talk about tiger-proof your company, because you have a real interesting story on that, because I thought that's fascinating how you did that. So I'd like to talk about that before we wrap up our discussion here. Okay, so anything else you'd recommend other than someone sitting down either in front of a computer or pulling out a yellow pad?
The reality is it doesn't. I think we've explained it enough that somebody could do it. There's no magic to having 10. There's no magic to having 20. It could be 3. The thing about it is to think about that you're writing it from the perspective of you're at the finish line, that I know I'm being successful when, so that it's something that you can experience in present tense. Even if it's aspirational right now, it's that you know where you're going and you know when you have reached that destination.
Good. And anyone that, of course, is in my coaching group will go through this, and we will take the time and go through it, like literally in the meeting, so that they have to write it out. So if you actually happen to have listened to this interview before you ever do this session with me live in my coaching group, then that's fine, because you're going to just add to it and you tweak whatever you need to tweak, or just go deeper with it, because a lot of times you can make a list like this, stick it in a file somewhere or in a journal or on your computer and forget you did it. And it's one of these things that now that I've introduced this on audio, that everyone that's in my coaching group is going to hear about all the time. Okay, so my list, just to share with, I'm not going to go through every one of them, and some of them actually are personal at a point where I don't want to actually talk about them because I don't want to take the time to thoroughly explain what they mean to me. Right. I'll just go through a few. No draining or toxic people in my life, that's one of them. Minimal grunt work, and only when I choose. So I don't mind working. I actually like working. And if I had all the money in the world, I don't think I'd change things all that much about work in the type of work that I do. I'd still be heavily involved in marketing because I love it. I would still interview smart people with Genius Network. I love doing that. It's interesting. It's exciting. It stimulates my brain. So, what I would change as I continue to add more revenue and things is the type of work. There's no bad work, and I really learned that from Dan Sullivan. There's just bad work for certain people, and his quadrant that he uses is incompetence, competent, excellence, and unique ability. And there are some things that I'm excellent at. However, it's kind of frustrating work for me. It doesn't flow. So minimal grunt work, and I've yet to figure out how to eliminate grunt work from my life. What I have figured out how to do, though, is delegate a lot of things that I'm just flat out not good at to people that are much more capable than myself, and so really minimizing grunt work. Another one is I take 150 free days a year. The free days, of course, Dan Sullivan's strategic coach concept, that I truly enjoy. Because there's one thing about taking time off and enjoying yourself, and another taking time off because you're trying to force yourself, but then you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs going, man, I really wish I was working. And, part of taking free time is doing it in a way to where it's really rejuvenating. Because if it's not rejuvenating free time, then, there's a disconnect. So one of the crucial things for me is that my free days and my free time are done with things that I really enjoy. And I like normal stuff, going to movies, exercising, reading, doing yoga, comedy clubs, hanging out with people, great discussions.
Thing, right? And all of those things, most of them are things that you have the enjoyment of them regardless of how much money you have. It's not about rich guy things or whatever.
Oh, exactly. I mean, heck, going and, hiking. I live here in, the Phoenix Valley area. Going hiking, Camelback Mountain is one of the coolest things on the planet, and it costs nothing to do that. Right. Another one is no aches and pains, because my exercise, diet, sleep, and spiritual practice keeps me fit. I have a couple herniated discs in my neck and my low back, and if I exercise and do lots of yoga and get proper sleep and just keep myself balanced, I don't experience pain. When I get stressed out and I neglect, any area of keeping myself in check, then I start, getting pains, and it's annoying. And there were times in my life where I was really overworked and overstressed that just chronic. I mean, it never went away. And I think pain is one of nature's way of saying, buddy, check this out, something to look at. And if you're going to keep driving yourself, see, some entrepreneurs, they just, the way they take time off is they just work themselves so hard that they physically get sick. And so nature says, well, if you're not going to take time off, I'm going to make you take time off. Here, how about catching a cold? How about getting this disease? How about having a breakdown? And so that's one of mine. Always laugh at myself in situations daily. I know I'm being successful when I never lose my sense of humor. Like, no matter how stressful things get, don't lose my sense of humor. Always laugh at myself. I think you can gauge the value of most relationships with other people with how much you laugh with them. and I always want to hang out with people that are not so uptight that they cannot see the humor in almost everything. And that doesn't mean you don't ever get serious. It also means that you don't take things so serious that you're just walking around uptight all the time.
Mm-hmm.
People that have no sense of humor are the worst group of people to hang out with for me. So I always laugh at myself because I'm actually kind of funny looking. So another one is I feel freedom and acceptance in my life and those that I choose to associate with. I want to hang out with people, and I like hanging out with people where we just click, and it just feels good. And part of that is just an intuitive thing. It just, when you're with someone, there's a chemistry, there's a synergy. I don't ever get involved in business deals where my intuition or my gut says, when I've gone against that feeling, I've always paid a price for it. So I think there's a lot to be said about intuition and just what you feel. And I want things to just flow. I don't like climbing uphill to make things work, and so that works for me. And this is one that you really helped me with. I love this one. I live like an artist with a $50,000 a month trust fund.
Right. Yeah.
And so, we were talking about, what would life be like if you kind of just did what you wanted to do, but you weren't a starving artist. You actually had money.
Right.
And so I live like an artist with a $50,000 a month trust fund where the money's just always there, and you kind of do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm being successful when I'm living that way. Another one is I never work on projects or with people that drain me.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to yours, that never work on projects or with people always work on projects that excite me and allow me to do my best work. That's yours. So mine is I never work on projects or with people that drain me. Another one is I have an abundance of positive energy, both physically and mentally. Energy is really important, very, very critical. It's not just the amount of time or thought you put into something, but it's the energy you bring to it. Another one is my home and office environments are perfect. One of the things I recently did in my home was I moved out every sort of business-related thing out of my home into my office. Some people love working at home. I mean, I literally took all the business books out. I rarely have a computer at my house because I don't even want to think about doing anything work-related. So I have a laptop that I'll occasionally bring to my home if I need to work at home or whatever. Rarely happens. I don't have business stuff there, and any business stuff that is ever at my house, it's all portable, so I can remove it.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay there. I do have a home office desk. There's just nothing. I can sit there and write and do whatever I want. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be business stuff because I do a lot of writing that has absolutely nothing to do with business.
Right.
I'm like a guy that likes to journal and stuff. I mean, to me, it's
love
just a way.
letters to your prison pen pal.
Yeah, of course. I really love letters to you, Dean. I didn't want to mention that here on this interview, though. Let's see. I never schedule appointments, take phone calls, have meetings, or check email unless I really want to. I don't like appointments. I don't like taking phone calls, and I can't stand booking meetings. And so the only ones, and of course email, unless I want to, and it fits into something that's really important to me. Other than that, my team knows, don't schedule appointments for me unless, really leads to something I want to do. Mm-hmm. I operate out of a sense of calm, not anxiety, stress, or overwhelm. How you operate in your state of mind is critical. So I know I'm being successful when I'm operating out of a sense of calm and not stress or overwhelm. Another one is I encourage and inspire others through my personal and business activities. Real important to me that I encourage and inspire others. That's kind of what I'd like my business activities in my life to be about. Another one is I pay myself first, and I always look out for number one, remembering that, it's all about, taking care of yourself first before you can take care of others.
Right.
And so my next one is I spend my time working in my unique ability, strategic coach term, unique ability. My unique ability defined is actually, this sounds kind of like a mission statement sort of, but I went through a whole unique ability exercise, and so I'll just let everyone know what it is. So let me explain this. What unique ability is kind of what, in the best possible state, what it is that I do. And I spent many hours kind of honing this down. So my unique ability is enthusiastically inquiring about and voicing powerful ideas, possibilities, and knowledge, and then connecting people to the wisdom so they're inspired to make better decisions that will significantly impact their lives, inspire them to act, and reduce their suffering so they can find peace and joy in their own existence. So that may sound kind of weird listening to it on an interview and stuff, but the point is, when I've really boiled down, and that's more of a work-related unique ability, that's why I do interviews, that's why I teach, is that I want to connect people with ideas, possibilities, and knowledge. Like right now, talking to you and interviewing you, I'm just wanting to connect these ideas, this knowledge, this wisdom to people so that all of the listeners are inspired to make better decisions that will significantly impact their lives, inspire them to act, and reduce their suffering so they can find peace and joy in their own existence. I mean, very much what we're doing today is just designed just to fit that. Right. And so I hope that makes sense and doesn't sound too foo-foo-ish for people. And then I walk my walk and talk my talk. And then my last one is I have a business that allows my current and devoted team to become wealthy as a result of their contributions in building and maintaining the organization. Because you don't have an interest in having a big company with lots of employees and stuff. And what you're able to pull in revenue-wise with a very small staff is nothing short of miraculous compared to most businesses. Right. In my company, I mean, I have a CEO, Brian Standage, and I have a very devoted team of people, and we're just growing the company, and it will continue to grow. And I want to do it in a way to where all the people that help me bake the bread are able to take part in eating it and reaching their own goals. And part of one of the things that I'm doing in the next week is everyone in my company is going to be doing a I Know I'm Being Successful win list so that they can get better clear on what is important in their life, and that my organization is just one of the vehicles that helps them get there. Okay, so having said that, in the time we've got left, talk about this amazing analogy you have called golf, G-O-L-F.
Yeah, perfect.
Because you like playing golf, and
I do.
I'd like you to share this. This is really neat.
Well, one of the things, the reason that I came up with that was I started thinking that, when you don't have deadlines and you don't have time commitments and you wake up every day and you say, what would you like to do today? Sometimes the challenge is getting something done, getting the things that you want to get done. And, my natural tendency is to not want to do work-related stuff or to procrastinate on doing those kind of things. And I started looking at it and realizing, well, why is it that I can play golf so effortlessly, and I can do it for 4 hours at a time, and I can do it 4 times a week? And, so I started looking at it as like, how could I get that same level of focus that I have when I'm playing golf and apply it to working on projects or working on doing things that I want to do outside of playing golf? And what I realized is that there's a few things about golf that make it effortless to do for me. Once, starting with, and I made a little acronym for golf there. So the G stands for having a goal. And a goal just means making a decision that this is what I'm going to do. So, the process of playing golf starts with making the decision that I'm going to play golf. And then I make the decision of, well, what golf course am I going to play? And I'm a member at a country club, so I know I'm going to play at my country club.
I even went there. We had lunch at your country club where you play golf when I was in Toronto. And let me first preface this by saying this is a great analogy, and you love golf. You go to Scotland to play golf. I mean, you're all into this. I'm kind of like, I like the George Carlin philosophy of golf. I think it's just a waste of real estate. But nonetheless, I've played golf a few times. Has it hit me in a way that where it strikes me as this is something that I really want to do, although I haven't completely given up on the whole concept. But the point is, you like playing golf. That works for you. And so, since you really thought about why does that work for me, here's why. And I think as you go through this, I want everyone to really listen about any area, think about this from the context that anything in your life that you really enjoy, how this kind of fits in, because it kind of explains why we like the things we like. At least that's what I get out of your exercise here in your analogy.
You can do the same thing with yoga. You could make an acronym out of yoga. It's essentially the same thing. Why, if you do it and you like it.
I'm going to do that. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but we'll go through. Okay. Without me continuing to sidetrack you some more, carry on.
So that G is a goal. So I've made the decision that I'm going to play golf, and I know that what that means is that I've set aside the time to do it. I know that for the next 5 hours, all in terms of driving to the country club, getting ready, getting my golf clubs out on the cart, playing the 18 holes, having a drink with the guys afterwards, and coming back to the house is going to be a 5-hour process. I've made the decision that that's what I'm going to do at that time, and I've set aside the time to do that. Then the O is an optimal environment. That golf courses are the optimal environment for playing golf. You know, they're set up where you start out on the first hole and you hit your ball towards the green and you go and you finish that hole, and then you move on to the second hole and the third hole and the fourth. There's a real progression to it. It's an optimal environment. Everything is right there. All the tools that you need, you've got them all right at your disposal. You got a little cart that you're driving around. You got your golf clubs in the back. You know, everything you need to play golf is right there because it's the optimal environment for it. L is for limited distractions. You know, when you're on the golf course, it's kind of like a great escape. You know, you're out on the golf course, the phone's not ringing, you're not distracted by the TV or the fridge or the magazines or going to do anything, you know, fixing yourself some food or whatever it is. There's no, or limited distractions when you're out playing golf. And then F is a fixed time frame that I know that it's going to have a beginning and it's going to have an end, and I know that the entire process of playing golf is a 5-hour round trip, that I know that I can get to the country club, play 18 holes, have a nice leisurely time to pack up and get back home, and it's going to be a 5-hour process. So I started thinking about that, is how could I apply those same things to doing other projects? So that's where I came up with that analogy. So G would be a goal. Let's say I want to write a newsletter or write an article. So I want to decide that that's what I'm going to do, and how long, I'm going to set aside time specifically to do that. Then O is an optimal environment. What would be the optimal environment for writing a newsletter or writing an article or writing a training program or recording a podcast or whatever it is? What's the optimal environment for that? And, part of it for me, I've got both in Toronto and in Florida now, I call them my evil scheme hatcheries or my labs, where I can go and there's no telephone, no internet, nothing to distract me. It's just set up optimally for my optimal activities, which are, writing something, recording something, outlining something, or thinking about something to outline or write or record. And if I am doing those things, that is the optimal environment for me. So if you come to my lab in Florida, I've got, 2 rooms. It's about a 900 square foot space, let's say. I've got 2 rooms. One of them is like a conference type of room with a big 8-foot whiteboard for throwing out ideas and outlining things and just thinking visually like that. Then I've got another room, which is my reading and writing room, where I've got a couple of really comfortable leather club chairs and a writing desk and a nice comfortable chair there, and a big cork board for outline, for laying out outline stuff. So for me, that's an optimal environment. And when I go in there, I know that it's going to support me in doing my best work without being distracted. Because if I'm at home, it's so easy to, surf all day on the internet or play a Xbox or watch TV or sit in the hot tub or whatever. There's any number of distractions,
Well, yeah, and so in Toronto when I was with you, you actually have a place that you lease, and it literally, I went there with you. There's like a chair and a desk, and there's nothing on the wall. There's no computers. There's no phones. It's like
the whiteboards, yeah.
You just go there and you think.
Like a hotel room, My one in Florida, my one in Georgetown is about the size of a good-sized hotel room. Completely quiet and the optimal environment for working. Limited distractions. So that's where that L comes in. And then that F, when you're working on a project, is having a fixed time frame. Knowing that I'm going to do this, I'm going to set aside this time, and I'm going to do it for 4 hours. or whatever it is, just to, choose one thing. I think over choice is often the big thing that keeps us from being our most productive,
Yeah, and so, basically, for me, I go play golf, if using your analogy, because we've been talking about this for, at least a couple of years now, and I've referenced it, but this is the first time I actually officially recorded anything with you on it. I go to the library. I mean, my favorite place to work is, block a couple hours, go to the library. Here's my objective. It's an optimal environment for me because it's quiet, it's peaceful, limited distractions, and fixed time frame. And I mean, libraries are just fabulous for me. I think I've made more money sitting in libraries than I ever have sitting around in an office. And they're free. I mean, it's amazing. And I like going to coffee shops are good. Sometimes depending on it, sometimes the noise and the overstimulation. You take Dan Sullivan as an example. Dan is a very prolific guy. And Dan likes going to coffee shops, and he actually likes the buzz and the noise and the people and the background music.
We had breakfast up in Toronto at one of these places that is a perfect environment for sitting. There's some background activity. It's never loud, but it's great.
Yeah, exactly. So for everyone listening, think about where can you go. What's an optimal environment for you? First, identify a goal. What's going to work for you? There's no right or wrong place. It's just where do you feel the most focused, and where can you do your best work? And if you can use this whole analogy, this acronym that Dean has invented called golf, I think it's just a fabulous way to be a heck of a lot more productive and enjoy what it is you do. And, Dan Sullivan teaches the no office concept where, offices are just not very productive places for entrepreneurs to get any work done. And I completely agree with that.
And that's true. Like, I want to make that distinction that what I have is not, I wouldn't call that an office because it's not, we have offices separate from that where everything takes place.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Very good. Anything else you want to add to that?
No.
Okay, then we've only got a few minutes left, so I want you to explain the tiger-proof your company, and we'll leave everyone with this, and that is it. And so you just kind of quickly tell the story and what it all means, and then our listeners will be set off to do their I Know I'm Being Successful list, and they can play golf as they develop it so that they can, it all ties together.
Yeah.
And the ultimate benefit of playing golf and creating I Know I'm Being Successful win list is that you can have something set up just like you're going to explain right now with Tiger Proof in your company.
A few years ago, I was riding in a plane and I was reading Forbes magazine, and I saw that they had the list of the top 40 entertainers. And on that list, I saw Siegfried and Roy were on that list, and they had just signed a new contract with Mirage for $28 million, and what they did for that was they worked 40 weeks, 8 shows a week for 40 weeks out of the year. And I also saw on the list, higher up on the list, the Blue Man Group. And they had revenue of $69 million. And what struck me as being very interesting about that was the fact that there were several groups of blue men, that they were running concurrent shows all over the country, and the original guys that invented the Blue Man Group don't perform anymore. That it's understudies, it's people who have learned all the moves. And that really struck me as something very interesting because a lot of the work I do is with real estate agents, and the way that realtors generally build their business is through personal promotion, where they build it up, where their business is, they're the focus of their business, and it's dependent on them. So I wrote a newsletter about that distinction, and the spooky thing about it was that I wrote that newsletter just 2 months before Roy was mauled by the tiger. And immediately, Siegfried and Roy, the whole show was shut down. Hundreds of people lost their jobs, millions of dollars in lost revenue, because now Roy could not perform the show, and the business had to shut down. And I thought, what a distinction that is, that, if you've got a choice of building your business to model the Blue Man Group, where what people are really coming to see is blue men doing this show, whereas if they were coming to see Siegfried and Roy, they were expecting to see Siegfried and Roy. They weren't coming to see two guys and a tiger. And, you know, the interesting thing about that is that you've got that choice. Anytime you start to build a business, you know, you've got the choice to build it so that it can be something that will survive and is not dependent on you. So the question that I ask people all the time is how tiger-proof is your business? What would happen to your business right now if you were mauled by a tiger today? And you have to, even just having that provocation or thinking that way is going to make you open up your eyes to another possibility. You know, you start to think, because none of us are, you know, it could happen to anybody. Not that you get mauled by a tiger, but you could get hit by a bus, or you could get in a car accident, or you could have any number of illnesses that could come down. And would your business be able to survive that? You know, the only way to be free of your business is to design it from the beginning. You know, it's interesting, the Blue Man Group is a three-man show, but there were four guys that started the whole thing so that they would always be sure that at least three of them would be able to show up.
Yeah, because you were telling me they all had part-time jobs.
They all had other jobs. They started it, you know, they started out as street performers.
God knows what that business is worth right now today is the time we do this interview, because it just grows and grows. But
yeah.
the point is it's because of how they set it up in the structure, and that was a great design.
Yeah.
And, you know, if anyone has never seen the Blue Man Group, I've seen it 3 times. It's amazing. I've seen it where it originally started in New York and in Chicago, and I've seen it in Vegas, and it's just an amazing show.
Next time you come to Toronto, we'll go see it there again, too.
They have it in Toronto now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. But, you know, the point is, everyone, you know, tiger-proof your company. And how do you do that? Well, you do it just like how do you become successful? You do it by design. And how do you do that? Well, you do it because you're focused and you give yourself the ability to work in a manner that leverages you, your skills, your talents, your resources. There's only 3 things that we can spend. That's time, money, and energy. And if we spend time, money, and energy in the most productive ways possible, then we are happier and we're better, and you know, we enjoy whatever you deem as making you successful. So I think, Dean, this has been a great value to all of the listeners. I'm going to take my coaching members through this as a constant part of my coaching groups all the time. So I wanted to document this recording for all of my coaching members so that they will have a refresher and kind of see where the original thinking behind this started from, and to have you as a model. So anything that you do that you think would be of any interest to our members, if they wanted to seek out Dean Jackson, if you have any...
what's great is I do a weekly podcast called marketingmonday.com. And that's, it's mostly geared towards real estate agents, but it's all universally applicable marketing lessons. So it'd be something valuable for everybody.
So how do they find that?
marketingmonday.com.
marketingmonday.com. Wonderful. Well, that's it, Dean. That's pretty much what I wanted to chat with you about and pick your brain about. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. And to all my listeners, I really hope you take the time now to, go play golf. Go set up a goal. And I'd like, at least the goal, if I could suggest one to you, is to create I know I'm being successful win list within the next few days if you haven't done it immediately, and find an optimal environment where you can create this, give yourself limited distractions, and make it happen. Because once you have this roadmap, it'll be a great filtering process, and I look forward to hearing your feedback when we meet in the coaching groups. And I want to wish everyone a wonderful day on behalf of myself and everyone at Piranha Marketing and part of the coaching groups in Genius Network. So that's it, Dean. Have a great day.
Thanks, Joe.
Hello, this is Joe Polish. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this interview. I hope you found it very useful. Please give me your feedback on all of the interviews that you listen to. I'd love to hear your feedback so we can always deliver a great program for you. Our website is www.joepolish.com, and we also have a Joe Polish Recommends section, so you can take a lot of the ideas and concepts that you hear on my Genius Network interview series and apply them to your business and find vendors and resources. You can go to joepolish.com to find that information and click on the Joe Polish Recommends section. And also, if you would like to find out about more interviews and invest in more useful Genius Network series interviews, go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks, and eat your competition alive.